Hey, you. Please vote in the Bally Awards. You only have a few more days. The link is in the description. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Greetings everyone, welcome back to Blade Bias. Today is the long-awaited follow-up video for the Opus V2. And I think that this ballast song really does live up to its name. To catch you up from the unboxing video, I opened this thing up and got to mess with it and wasn't a huge fan of its balance, but was looking forward to spending more time with it and noted that this was a very, very premium feeling ballast song. This is Ted's personal unit, and I would like to give him a huge, huge thank you for lending me this so I can make a few videos on it. This isn't mine to keep or anything. I'll be sending it back to him when I've completed my time with it. But huge, huge thank you to Ted for lending me his personal unit. The Opus V2 is very impressive. Is it perfect? No. But it is everything that I have come to expect from a Machine-Wise product, and it can be described in very much the same way as I have described Machine-Wise products in the past. It's dense, it's weighty, it feels expertly machined, and it just flips correctly. In my hands, at least. I know a lot of people aren't a fan of longer ballast songs, and that's perfectly fine. But I feel that the recent Machine-Wise line, from the Sasori all the way up to the Opus V2, just comes a step above expertly machined like they used to be. These ballast songs feel truly premium in a way that I've never really felt before. On my main channel, I did a video on the Kraken, and I noted that Squid kind of had a fit and finish that was unseen anywhere else in the ballast song hobby. And I think I'm pretty confidently able to say at this point that I can now switch that award from Squid over to Machine-Wise, because while Squid stuff and most of the rest of the hobby still does feel good, this new Machine-Wise stuff just feels a cut above, and I think it really lives up to its name. The Opus V2, named for being Machine-Wise's magnum opus, their best work, and I think that this is some of their best work, machining-wise at the very least. And I think that this is one of the most premium feeling ballast songs I've ever felt. It feels dense, it feels durable, it feels weighty, it just feels expensive in all of those ways that you want something that's this expensive to feel. I know people are inevitably going to ask me a ton about the Opus versus the Seraph. And while I don't really feel that they... This is a tough one. I don't think that the Opus... Oh gosh, how do I say this? I don't think that I like the Opus better than the Seraph, but I do think that the Opus is the better ballast song. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit. But let's talk about balance, because this thing is with no weights in it. When I initially opened it, these were the weights that were pre-installed. You can see they're the standard small weights with this little plastic piece in it. Ted had mentioned that he didn't have the heavy weights. I had thought the heavy weights were installed based on how it was flipping. And I was like, okay, so the light weights are going to be much, much better. So I was a little bit scared to find out that the weights that were inside of the Opus were essentially the light ones. Thankfully, I don't remember who, but I think it was Ted, pointed out that the zippy weights might work with it. And thankfully, I actually have a set of zippy Seraph weights right here. And I've had them for the longest time. I just haven't felt like installing them because I think the Seraph, to my preferences, is exactly where I want it to be. So the first thing that I did is I took apart the Opus and I threw the zippy weights in there. And that changed up the balance perfectly. It really did just bring it to a level that I wanted. It smoothed out some of that handle bias, and it made the thing flip and fan specifically much better than those additional weights, or those original weights did. Now, I think that most people, most ballast song flippers, are going to prefer those smaller weights, or those smaller, the lighter Machine-Wise weights, not the zippy weights, the standard weights, if you will, because it just introduces a little bit of handle bias that I think if you're a high-level flipper, that's what you're looking for. But I'm not a high-level flipper. I'm the guy who loves the Seraph, and a lot of people consider that opinion in and of itself to be a skill issue, so I couldn't care less what the more experienced flippers think. This is how I want it to flip. I want it to be lighter. I don't want that little bit of extra handle bias that makes the fans kind of wobble all over the place. I really like how it feels without that. So the zippy weights did provide that, and they kept a little bit of momentum thanks to the tungsten ball embedded inside of them, so that you didn't really lose. You just kind of more lost the handle bias rather than the momentum carrying properties of the Opus V2 with those weights in it. But the real magic really came kind of expectedly when I took the weights out entirely. This is a whole other ball game. This is the balance that I love the Seraph for, but now it has tip weight. The blade is basically everything that I would improve about the Seraph. The Seraph, it gets thicker right here, and then it gets thinner all the way down to its point. But you'll notice that the Opus V2 stays very evenly thick throughout the whole entire blade, which means that more of the weight of this blade is pushed out towards the tip, which makes fanning even better because the blade now carries more momentum. Basically, the further the weight is away from the point that's spinning, the pivot point, the more momentum it will carry. And in a fan, much like just swinging the handle like this, in a fan, that point is the tip of the blade and the end of the handles. So I found fanning to be delightful, equally as delightful as the Seraph, but with that little bit of tip weight that I've been missing from the Seraph. And I shouldn't even say I've been missing it, because it's not something that I technically notice until you try something that does have that tip weight. And for me personally, it just kind of rocks. It's amazing. It flips really, really well. What isn't as amazing for me, and is probably my biggest complaint, is that this unit specifically is very, very iffy on the tolerances. As soon as I untightened the screws, I noticed that they were a little bit loose, but they weren't loosening over the time that I was flipping it, until I went to put it back together with the zippy weights installed. And it turns out, I don't know if this is the Opus in general or just this specific unit, but you'll notice I'm being very light on the screwdriver here. If you even turn these screws even less than 1/8 of a whole turn of the screws, it starts binding up, and that's just not something that I expect from a MachineWise product. It's not an awful thing because you can still get them tight, and because MachineWise screws have a higher thread count, they're a little bit more difficult to get to back out. But ever since I took the weights out entirely, I've noticed the weights backing out a little bit more. I don't know, it's been just an interesting dance trying to get this thing sounding good while still not having a little bit of bind, eliminating how that ice pick sounds, and then it loosens over time. It's just kind of not been the best. This is not your typical just tighten the screws down as much as they go. It's kind of like the second you start to feel resistance, you turn it a tiny bit past that, and that might already be too much. It's a fit and finish thing that ultimately doesn't matter too much, although I think it would be very different if I paid for this and I was experiencing that. Now, thankfully, this is a situation that I would assume you could send this thing back for a spa day from MachineWise to fix, but that would be up to Ted whether or not he wants to do that. If he's even experiencing that at all, I don't know how much he's messed with this thing before sending it to me, but that was something that I noticed. Now, the question that everyone's going to ask, how is it compared to the Seraph? The Seraph is still my favorite Balisong. There's just something about it, whether it's the nostalgia or the attachment to it I have from this specific unit to the story that I have with it, whatever the case may be, I do ultimately still prefer the Seraph. This isn't the sort of thing where I'm going to go out of my way to get an Opus to replace my Seraph. But I think that the Opus is the better Balisong, most notably just because it's denser. You can hear it kind of in the sounds that they make when you flip them. And this isn't perfectly tuned, so normally it might sound a little bit better than that, and it does sound a little bit deeper and bouncier with weights in it. But when you compare that to this, yes, the Seraph sounds better, but that sound comes from the relative hollow feeling of the Seraph. which is interesting. If I had to compare the Opus V2 to the Seraph in a single sentence, I would say that it is denser. It's a denser, heavier feeling Seraph with more tip weight. Because the Seraph, by comparison, feels very light and airy, hollow almost, despite the fact that they have basically the same interior, although I guess the Seraph does have bigger milled pockets in there. If you look inside, you can see that there's little pockets milled out of the top of the slabs. And it's the same thing in the Opus, but I guess the Opus has a little bit less material removed. Whatever the case may be, I find that interesting considering that the Seraph has no hole patterns or anything to speak of, while the Opus V2 Seraph has no holes or anything to speak of, while the Opus V2 has these speed channels here. It's a very interesting comparison, but the Seraph does just feel lighter, more hollow, a little bit more airy, if you will, and kind of cheaper. But that's always been the fun of the Seraph to me, the fact that it is light and agile and feels kind of hollow and sounds really unique. So for my preference, if I'm spending $750, I'm personally going with the Seraph. Having said that, I do think that the Opus V2 is going to be the favorite if people do try them back to back. Or let's put it this way. If you're one of the people that love the Seraph for what it is, you're probably going to like the Seraph better. If you're one of those people that think that enjoying the Seraph is a skill issue, or you just don't enjoy the Seraph for your own personal reasons, you're probably going to like the Opus V2 better. Huge, huge thank you to Ted for sending this thing out for me to try. I've really enjoyed my time with it. And a huge thank you to all of you for watching. That's going to do it for this video, and I will see you all in the next one. Later.